Welcome. Welcome back, everybody. The second part of my three-part special, breaking down teams in the AFC and the NFC for the 2013 season. So far away, man. Season's so far away. Wish it started tomorrow. Because I already miss football. In my previous segment, I talked about which teams in the NFL, one from each conference, have the biggest chance of taking a step back in 2013. Now I'm going to talk about two teams that have the biggest chance to make a jump forward in 2013. And starting off with the AFC, the AFC was not, like I said in the previous segment, the AFC was not very deep. The AFC had only a handful of really good teams, or even good teams, and the rest of them were kind of average. Like you look at if you look at the six playoff teams, other than that, there really weren't any other good teams in the league. Everybody else, other than the Steelers, was a losing team. I don't know really why that happened. I mean, you have some good teams out there. I mean, Pittsburgh, I thought, on paper they were a better team. I thought Tennessee on paper was better than what they were. I thought San Diego and Oakland and Kansas City were on paper better than they were. So if I had to pick one team out of the AFC, it looks like it's got the brightest future. This might surprise a lot of people, but I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins. And Miami's not a sexy pick to do anything next year, Again, scored fewer points than they gave up. Had a pretty abysmal turnover differential. But they did win one more game than they did last year, which is a minor improvement. They got a young quarterback in Ryan Tannehill who's got a fair bit of upside, Threw for 12 touchdowns and over 3,000 yards his rookie year. The real question on this team, though, is not the defense, because they got that solved. They got a defense that was in the top 10 in sacks, led by Cameron Wake, the All-Pro end with 15. They would definitely probably like to get some more takeaways because 10 interceptions in a season and 16 in general is a pretty low number. I mean, 27th in picks, 28th in total turnovers. You can't really afford those kind of numbers if you're looking to make a next step. I mean, they played a couple of really, really good games this year. I mean, first game against New England, they hung tough with them for a while. They beat the Seattle Seahawks. They gave Indy a very, very close game. I mean, they hammered the New York Jets. So they are a team. They even beat the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. So they've proven that they can hang with some good teams. But the reason why I said they're a team with a good upside is because they have a very, very good defense, which you need to have nowadays in the NFL. I mean, they gave up just under 20 points a game. And I think another year with Tannehill and head coach Joe Philbin, and the possibility that they got cap room and they have the ability to bring in some talent, they're one of the best teams in terms of the cap situation. I could see them bringing in any of the big-name receivers, Craig Jennings, Mike Wallace, Dwayne Bowe. They could bring those guys in and really, make Tannehill more comfortable down there in southern Florida. I don't know if Reggie Bush is going to be back because he had a good year last year, but he's not really an every down back you can rely on. Neither is Daniel Thomas, the 25-year-old out of Kansas State. But they're a team that I think's got a really good chance to make some leeway, make some noise next year. I mean, they have a good couple of receivers. They've got Devone Best, who's a very, very good number 2 or number 3 receiver, had over 700 yards this year. You have Brian Hartline, who had over 1,000, had that big game, that monster game against Arizona. But again, what this team's really going to be good with next year is they've got a decent team in place, and they've got cap room. Anytime you have a decent team and cap room in place, you're going to be a contender next year. Miami, don't be surprised if they surprise a few teams. But the next team on the list, the NFC sleeper, I'm going to have to say the New Orleans Saints, and it's because of the reacquisition of Sean Payton from a suspension. I mean, you can clearly tell that Saints team fell off a cliff really this year from their production because Sean Payton wasn't there. I mean, they go from 13-3 to 7-9. I think if Bountygate didn't happen, I think there's a high probability the Saints would have played the Super Bowl in New Orleans, would have been in that game. Because think about it. You don't lose Greg Williams, who was a decent defensive coordinator, even though he was a dumbass. You don't lose Sean Payton, who they lost for the whole season. You don't lose Mickey Loomis and Joe Vitt for much of the year for their involvement. You don't have Jonathan Vilma playing with that suspension hanging over his head. You don't have any of the other players playing with suspensions hanging over their heads. That would have been a more focused group, and I think a team that could have potentially made done some more damage in the NFC. The key question for them is, how's that defense going to play? Because on the offensive side of the football, you get Sean Payton back, you're going to get a little bit of a stronger mentality. So I think the run game will pick back up. I think they'll probably be in like 110, 115 yards a game rushing, which would be good enough to balance out Drew Brees to the point he doesn't have to throw every down like he did this past year. I mean, his completion percentage dropped 7 points this season from last because he had to throw more, I think, than he should. Anytime Brees gets a running game, he's going to be deadly. I mean, you look at the 2 seasons, the Saints were in the top 6 in the league in rushing. Brees had the 2 greatest completion percentage seasons by a quarterback in NFL history. There's a correlation there. Brees plays better when the running game plays better. The defense was easily the worst in league history. I mean, I could reel off some numbers for you. You're not going to like them. 28 points a game allowed. 7,000 yards allowed, most in league history. Second worst against the pass, worst against the run. I mean, you look at some of the games that they lost this year. I mean, this team could have very easily been a playoff team. At Carolina, actually the 2 games against Carolina, the one in week 2 and week 17. If they make a couple of stops on third down, get off the field, they win those games. So that makes them 9-7. They don't blow the lead against the Chiefs, makes them 10-6. The stupid penalty that cost them the field goal against Green Bay, that makes them 11-5. This team very, very easily could have been an 11-5 football team. Because you look at, they played well in some big games. They ended Atlanta's undefeated start. They beat Tampa Bay twice. When both times they really weren't expected to play well. They gave Green Bay a good game for a while there, and they beat San Diego. I mean, San Diego wasn't really a great team, but that was a big win because it finally snapped them out of their winless funk. I mean, New Orleans' turnover differential actually went up. They were +2 from last year where they're in the negatives. But as with the Saints, it's always been the thing with Sean Payton. How's the defense going to play? Because if the defense plays the way that they need them to play, like if they play well enough, maybe only give up like 20 points a game, this Saints team can be dangerous. Because they can score more than 20 on almost any different team. I mean, this team really, I think, banded together quite well from losing Sean Payton. Because, I mean, even though they started off 0-4 and the best they could do that year was be 5-5 at one point, you have to understand this team had so much shit go against them. With Bountygate, losing draft picks, They lost a couple of key players, Carl Nix and Robert Meacham, to free agency. Vilma had that hanging over his head the whole season. He couldn't play his best. All that pressure's off now. All that pressure is off. The fact they're switching to a 3-4 defense, which I think really favors the team, particularly against the pass. But they have to improve in two key areas. They can't get just 30 sacks a year. If you're not going to be a defense that's going to play particularly well statistically against the pass or the run, you got to be able to at least pressure the quarterback into mistakes, which means the turnover differential will automatically go up. And the other thing is, you can't give up 28.4 points per game. You just can't. I think this Saints team will definitely improve their defense. I mean, they said they want to switch to a 3-4, which is what Rob Ryan intends to do, or Romeo Crennel, whichever one of those guys they hire, which is it's down to pretty much those two guys at this point. I think the best way that I can say it is I just think that that's going to be a huge, huge impact positively in the Saints team. Okay, guys, I'll be back in a minute with the top two teams in each conference, in my opinion, who will play against each other in New York in Super Bowl 48.